History, as we know, it is just the surface of a much deeper story. Our past is built upon hidden foundations, the forgotten empires, and lost knowledge of shadow civilizations. These mysterious precursors existed long before the famous cultures of Egypt and Mesopotamia, laying the groundwork for humanity's greatest achievements. By the end of this journey, you will see the entire timeline of human history in a startling new light. We will explore enigmatic evidence, from cities submerged beneath the waves to artifacts that defy explanation, all pointing to a world-altering truth. What caused these advanced societies to vanish without a trace? And what secrets did they pass down? How much of our ancient past remains hidden in plain sight? What forgotten chapter of human ambition speaks to you most? The great river cultures stand as pillars in the story of humanity, their foundations seemingly rising from the river silt itself. Think of ancient Egypt, its lifeblood the predictable, fertile floods of the Nile. Picture Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, where the first cities were built. Recall the sprawling, meticulously planned cities of the Indus Valley and the early Chinese dynasties that took root along the Yellow River. These societies mastered agriculture on a massive scale, developed the earliest forms of writing, erected pyramids and ziggurats that still awe us today, and organized thousands of people under complex governments and laws. They are, without a doubt, the celebrated cradles of civilization, the apparent dawn of everything we recognize as advanced human society. Their accomplishments are the visible peaks, the parts of the story illuminated by history's spotlight. But a peak cannot exist without a mountain beneath it. What if these brilliant cultures were not the true beginning, but rather the inheritors? What if their sudden, seemingly miraculous rise was actually a rebirth, built upon the sunken foundations of a world we have yet to fully remember? This is the haunting possibility that draws us into the shadows. These shadow civilizations are not mere fantasy, but a compelling framework for explaining the inexplicable. To understand them, picture a detective arriving at a crime scene where the final, obvious event is clear, but the clues point to a much earlier, unseen struggle. The great river cultures are that final event, magnificent and undeniable. Yet the anomalies they contain are the clues to a deeper mystery. A shadow civilization is the theoretical culprit, a precursor society whose existence we can only infer from the gaps and puzzles left behind. They are like the architectural blueprints used to construct a grand house. You live in the house, you admire its structure, but the original plans remain lost, leaving you to wonder how its most ingenious features were ever conceived. These precursors are shadowy precisely because they leave no deciphered written records for us to read, no undeniable capital cities we can confidently label as their own. Instead, they communicate through echoes. We find advanced astronomical knowledge embedded in myths and monuments, knowledge that seems to appear fully formed without a long period of trial and error. We uncover architectural techniques like the mind-boggling precision of stonework in early pyramids that are inexplicably sophisticated for their presumed time. Most tellingly, we find a common thread in the mythology of later cultures, stories of gods or ancestors, of those who came before and brought the gifts of agriculture, law, and technology. The idea posits that before the familiar rise of Egypt and Sumer, there may have been other societies, perhaps even more advanced in specific ways, that were lost. They could have been erased by a sudden cataclysm, a great flood, or a dramatic shift in climate, or they may have simply faded over millennia, their people dispersing and their legacy slowly absorbed by the successor cultures that built upon their ruins. Unraveling this concept forces us to read history against the grain, to look at the so-called dawn of civilization not as a starting point, but as a recovery, a renaissance after a forgotten dark age. It asks us to consider what was lost so that what we see as the beginning was actually a new chapter. Standing before the Great Sphinx, we are told a familiar story, a monument carved for a pharaoh some 4,500 years ago. Yet the stones themselves seem to whisper a different, much older tale. Look past the iconic human head and lion body and direct your attention to the deep, undulating, vertical fissures carved into its limestone core. This is not the smooth, polished wear of a desert sculpted by sand and wind. Geologists who have studied these patterns argue this is the distinctive signature of water, specifically heavy, persistent rainfall that fell in sheets over centuries, cascading down the walls of the Sphinx enclosure and gouging these deep, vertical channels into the rock. This simple observation ignites a profound historical mystery. The climate of Egypt for the last 5,000 years has been overwhelmingly dry, a desert landscape where rain is a rare event. To find a time when enough water fell to cause this kind of erosion, we must look back to a much wetter period, a time scholars call the Neolithic subpluvial, which ended around 5,000 years before the Common Era. This geological clock suggests the Sphinx body could be far more ancient, potentially dating back to a time when the Sahara was a green savanna. If the erosion on the Sphinx was caused by rainfall that vanished millennia before Pharaoh Khafre ever ruled, then who truly built it? This hypothesis points to a precursor society, a shadow civilization that possessed the skill and vision to execute this monumental project. The dynastic Egyptians, then, would not be the original architects but the inheritors. They might have found this weathered, ancient leonine form protruding from the sands, recognized its power and sanctity, and recarved the head into the likeness of their own king. This transforms the Sphinx from a proud achievement of a known civilization into a relic, a mysterious heirloom from a forgotten age. The controversy is not merely about dating a statue, it is about the very bedrock of history. It asks us to listen to the evidence written in stone, an evidence that challenges our entire understanding of humanity's first steps toward grandeur. Far from the river valleys on a windswept hill in Turkey, a discovery was made that shattered the timeline of human progress. Göbekli Tepe is not a city or a fortress, but a temple of staggering scale and complexity, erected around 9,600 years before the Common Era. This date is not just old, it is profoundly revolutionary. It means these immense stone circles were being raised over 6,000 years before Stonehenge and a full 7 millennia before the Great Pyramid of Giza. The structures themselves are bewildering, composed of massive T-shaped limestone pillars, some weighing over 10 tons, arranged in precise circles. Each pillar is a canvas, intricately carved with a menagerie of animals, from foxes and scorpions to lions and vultures, executed with an artistic skill that feels utterly out of place. The greatest mystery, however, lies not in the stones themselves, but in the hands that built them. According to every established model of history, the people who constructed Göbekli Tepe should not have been capable of such a feat. They were hunter-gatherers, nomadic bands who followed their food sources. They had no agriculture to provide a stable food surplus, no pottery to store goods, and no evidence of a permanent settlement at the site itself. This turns our understanding of civilization on its head. The textbook narrative insists that agriculture came first, providing the stability and surplus that then allowed for complex society, religion, and monumental architecture. Göbekli Tepe loudly declares the opposite. Here, it seems, the temple came first. The construction of this sacred place required a level of social organization, sophisticated symbolism, and coordinated labor that we never attributed to prehistoric hunter-gatherers. Who were these people? They represent a true shadow civilization, not in the sense of a lost empire, but as a cultural force whose capabilities and spiritual life remain almost entirely unknown to us. They mastered megalithic engineering and created a central, holy place, drawing people from across the region, all without leaving behind the traditional markers of an advanced society. Göbekli Tepe forces a humbling question. What if the drive to build the monumental, to express complex ideas in stone, is not a product of civilization, but its very cause? The waves of the Indian Ocean hold a secret that bridges the world of epic poetry and hard physical evidence. Off the coast of modern Gujarat, the waters of the Gulf of Combat conceal the ruins of a city known as Dwarka. For centuries, its story was confined to ancient Hindu scriptures like the Mahabharata, which described it as the glorious, divinely planned capital of the god King Krishna. These texts tell of a magnificent city of palaces and wide boulevards, a beacon of power and prosperity that was ultimately consumed by the sea upon Krishna's departure from the world. It was a tale, a powerful myth, seemingly symbolic of a golden age lost to time. Then, marine archaeologists began to map the seafloor. What they found was not symbolism, but stone. Lying beneath the waves are the remains of massive stone structures, geometric walls, stone anchors, and scattered artifacts. The sheer scale of the submerged settlement points to a sophisticated, organized, and likely maritime urban center. The dating of these ruins is a subject of intense debate, with some preliminary investigations suggesting they could be more than 9,000 years old. If even a fraction of that age is accurate, it places this city in a time frame that predates the entire Indus Valley civilization, long considered one of the subcontinent's foundational cultures. Here, the legend of Dwarka transforms from a mere allegory into a potential historical record. It suggests that the story of a great city sinking was not invented, but remembered, a catastrophic event so profound it was seared into cultural memory for millennia. The submerged walls are a ghostly echo of a shadow civilization, a sophisticated society that mastered urban planning and sea travel, only to be erased by rising sea levels at the end of the last ice age. This is not just an underwater city, it is a stunning fusion of myth and material proof, forcing us to ask what other foundational legends might be waiting on the ocean floor, not as fiction but as drowned history. Across the Atlantic, in the lush jungles of the Americas, another foundational culture presents a similar puzzle. The Olmecs of ancient Mesoamerica are celebrated as the mother culture, the apparent origin point for everything that followed from the Maya to the Aztec. Their legacy is carved in stone, literally, in the form of those immense stoic heads, each one a portrait of a powerful ruler weighing many tons. They developed a complex calendar, a system of writing, and a cosmology that would echo for centuries. Yet, for all their grandeur, the origins of the Olmecs are strangely obscure. Their civilization seems to emerge around 1500 years before the Common Era with a stunning level of sophistication, as if a cultural switch was flipped. Where did this sudden expertise come from? The archaeological record offers a tantalizing clue. Before the Olmecs dominated the landscape, other societies were already laying a sophisticated groundwork. At sites like Tlatilco, we find beautifully crafted pottery and haunting, two-faced figurines that display an artistic sensibility and technical skill that feels fully developed. The Capacha culture, too, produced distinctive, elegant vessels that speak of a complex ritual life. These were not simple villages, but communities with their own advanced traditions. This evidence suggests the Olmecs were not a spontaneous creation. but the most successful and dominant manifestation of a cultural ferment that was already underway. They were the brilliant culmination, not the lonely beginning. This idea is powerfully reinforced by Olmec mythology itself. Their own traditions speak of their ancestors arriving from across the sea, from the east, led by wise, bearded teachers who brought with them the knowledge of writing, astronomy, and governance. This is not an isolated story. It is a recurring motif in the foundation legends of many ancient cultures, a persistent memory of civilizing influences from a distant, advanced source. Could this narrative be a folk memory of a real interaction with a precursor culture, a shadow civilization that traveled the coastlines or was already established? The Olmecs, with their colossal heads and cosmic knowledge, may therefore stand as a classic example of a successor culture. They built their magnificent achievements upon an older, partially lost foundation, inheriting a legacy from a people whose name we do not know and whose cities may still lie hidden beneath the jungle floor. They were not the mother but the powerful child of a forgotten parent culture. The silence of these lost cultures speaks through the violence of their end. To understand why entire civilizations could vanish, we must look to a time of global chaos, a period of such profound environmental upheaval it could erase continents from human memory. The world 12,000 years ago was a different planet. The great ice sheets miles thick were melting at an astonishing rate. This was not a slow, gentle process, but a series of catastrophic events known as meltwater pulses, where colossal volumes of fresh water were dumped into the oceans in geological instants. Sea levels rose hundreds of feet, swallowing vast coastal plains that had been home to humanity for millennia. Imagine the world map you know, but with entire landmasses now lost beneath the waves. Any society that had settled along those fertile, low-lying shores would have seen their world disappear in a relentless, unstoppable advance of water. Their cities, their farmlands, their very homes would have been submerged, leaving only the faintest of echoes in the legends of a great flood that permeate nearly every culture on Earth. But the water was only one part of the cataclysm. Around the same time, a second, more fiery disaster may have struck. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis points to evidence of a fragmented comet or asteroid exploding in the atmosphere above North America. This was not a single impact crater, but a series of titanic airbursts like cosmic bombs detonating in the sky, unleashing unimaginable fire and force. The result would have been a continent-spanning wildfire, followed by a dramatic, rapid cooling of the global climate that lasted for over 1,000 years. For any developing society, this would have been an existential blow. Their agriculture would have collapsed overnight in the frozen darkness. Their populations would have been decimated by fire, famine, and the sudden, violent shift in the world they knew. This double catastrophe of water and fire provides the most plausible mechanism for a global reset. It explains how a potential network of early, advanced cultures could have been utterly fragmented, their infrastructure destroyed, their people scattered into small, struggling groups. These survivors, carrying only what they could remember, became the refugees of a forgotten world. They carried the seeds of their knowledge inland, up the great river systems that offered new life. There, over generations, these scattered fragments of astronomy, architecture, and social organization slowly took root again, coalescing into the cultures we now call the first civilizations. The great river cultures were not the beginning then. They were the rebirth, the phoenix rising from the ashes of a world we are only just beginning to remember. These ancient myths, passed down across countless generations, are far more than simple campfire stories. They read like the collective trauma of our species, a series of vivid nightmares rooted in a shared, real-world event. The story of a great, world-engulfing flood is the most persistent of these memories. In the Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh, the hero Utnapishtim is warned by a god to build a boat to survive a divine deluge. In the Hebrew Bible, Noah does the same. Hindu scriptures tell of Manu, saved by a fish who guides his ship through the rising waters. On the other side of the world, the Maya have their own flood myth, and the Aztecs spoke of the destruction of the fourth sun by a colossal inundation. The details vary, but the core narrative is unshakable, a terrifying, waterlocked memory of survival against impossible odds. These are not independent inventions. They are the same story, told by cultures separated by vast oceans, all describing a time when the world was wiped clean by water. But the flood is only one part of a larger pattern. Many of these same cultures speak of a time before the Cataclysm, a golden age when beings of great power lived among humanity. The Sumerians wrote of the Anunnaki, the Greeks of the Titans, and countless traditions speak of divine ancestors or civilizing heroes who descended from the sky or arrived from across the sea. These figures are consistently credited with gifting humanity the very foundations of society, the knowledge of planting crops, the principles of law, and the secrets of the stars. This is not the gradual, stumbling progress archaeology often expects. This is a story of knowledge being delivered, fully formed from a more advanced source. The most detailed and compelling of these narratives is Plato's account of Atlantis. He describes not a mythical land of gods, but a powerful, sophisticated, and arrogant empire that existed 9,000 years before his own time. A civilization that built a magnificent island capital with concentric rings of water and land, before it was swallowed by the sea in a single day and night of misfortune. For centuries, this was read as a philosophical fable. But what if Plato was recording a genuine, albeit distorted, historical tradition? What if Atlantis was not a single place, but a memory of many places, of those lost coastal civilizations drowned by the meltwater pulses at the end of the Ice Age? The sheer consistency of these themes, found in every corner of the globe, is a deafening chorus. It is the sound of humanity trying to explain its own past, trying to make sense of a time when the world broke and a higher culture was lost. These myths are the smoke, and the shadow civilizations are the fire. They are the surviving echo of a real world that sank beneath the waves, its legacy carried inland by the refugees who would one day build the world we think we know. The star charts of our ancestors hold a secret far grander than simple constellations. Across the globe, from the Giza Plateau to the plains of Salisbury, ancient builders embedded a profound cosmic clock into their greatest monuments. The three pyramids of Giza are not just arranged randomly. Their layout mirrors the three stars of Orion's belt with an uncanny precision. Stonehenge's massive stones capture the first light of the summer solstice with breathtaking accuracy. And the Maya calculated celestial cycles so vast they span over 25,000 years. These are not the lucky guesses of primitive stargazers. They are the signature of a deep, sophisticated understanding of a celestial phenomenon known as the precession of the equinoxes. Precession is the slow, gradual wobble of our planet's axis, like a spinning top beginning to slow down. One complete wobble takes 26,000 years, meaning the North Star is not permanent. Polaris holds that position today, but in the time of the ancient Egyptians, the star Thuban was the pole star, and in 12,000 years it will be the brilliant Vega. To detect this incredibly slow drift requires meticulous, generation-spanning observation. You cannot simply watch the sky for a single lifetime and see the pattern. You need records, precise data passed down for centuries, perhaps even millennia. This presents an almost impossible puzzle. How could the earliest known civilizations, which had only just mastered writing and agriculture, have also possessed a multi-generational database of the sky's slowest dance? The knowledge seems to appear fully formed without any evidence of the long, painstaking observation it would require. The most compelling explanation is that this wisdom was not their own original discovery, but an inheritance. It points directly to a precursor culture, a shadow civilization that watched the stars for so long they mapped the great year of 26,000 years. They understood that the heavens themselves are in motion on a scale almost incomprehensible to a single human life. This lost culture then encoded their hard-won knowledge into a universal language, the language of architecture and myth. They built a message in stone, ensuring that even if their name was forgotten, their understanding of cosmic time would survive. The pyramids, Stonehenge, and the Maya codices are not just monuments, they are pages from a lost library of the sky, a library founded by teachers whose very existence has been erased by time. The stones themselves refuse to tell their secrets. Scattered across the globe, from the high plains of Lebanon to the mountaintops of Peru, lie monuments of such staggering weight and impossible precision that they challenge the very limits of our historical imagination. Take the colossal platform of Baalbek, known as the Trilithon. Here, 3 limestone blocks, each estimated to weigh over 800 tons, are nestled together with such intimacy it seems an act of giants. To put that weight into perspective, a single one of these stones is heavier than 2 fully loaded jumbo jets. Modern engineering, with our cranes and hydraulics, would struggle mightily to move such a mass even a few feet. Yet somehow these stones were quarried over a mile away, lifted, and fitted into a wall with joints so tight they defy belief. The conventional explanation of thousands of laborers using wooden rollers and ramps begins to feel like a child's story when faced with such a physical reality. How do you even begin to manipulate an 800-ton block with ropes and logs? The friction alone would be insurmountable. The logistics of coordinating such an effort with primitive tools bordering on the fantastical. Then travel across the world to the fortress of Sacsayhuaman in Peru. Here, the stones are not merely massive, they are impossibly intricate. Enormous blocks of andesite, some weighing hundreds of tons, are carved with complex, interlocking shapes. Their edges are not straight lines, but a puzzle of curves and angles, fitting into one another so perfectly that for centuries the local saying has held true: not a single sheet of paper, not even the thin blade of a razor, can be inserted between them. This is not simple dry stone walling. This is a form of polygonal masonry that represents a pinnacle of stoneworking, a technique that seems to have appeared fully formed without any clear, gradual evolution. The surfaces are so smooth, the joints so exact that it suggests a method far beyond the patient pecking of stone hammers. These are not isolated anomalies. They are a pattern, a recurring signature of a construction skill that appears, dazzles us with its brilliance, and then seems to vanish from the historical record. The sheer inadequacy of our standard tools to explain these feats forces a difficult question. What if we are missing a piece of the puzzle? What if the shadow civilizations we have been discussing possessed not just advanced knowledge of the stars, but also a forgotten mastery of the physical world? Speculation naturally turns to lost technologies. Could they have discovered a form of acoustic science, using specific sound frequencies to neutralize the weight of stone, allowing them to glide massive blocks into place as if they were feathers? Perhaps they had a chemical or even an organic compound, a plant-based solvent that could temporarily soften granite to a clay-like consistency, making it possible to mold and shape it before it re-hardened into its final, indestructible form. Maybe their understanding of leverage, counterweights, and simple machines was so profound it has been lost to us. a school of engineering that died with its masters. These ideas are often dismissed as fringe, and for good reason. There is no smoking gun, no ancient text that outlines the recipe for softening stone. Yet the megaliths remain silent and immovable. They are the evidence. Their existence is a constant, quiet rebuke to our neatly packaged timelines. They stand as the ultimate proof that our current understanding of the ancient past is not just incomplete, but perhaps fundamentally flawed in its assumptions about human capability. These stones are not just ruins, they are a question carved in rock, waiting for an answer we have yet to find. The silence of the Indus Valley is one of the most profound in all of archaeology. Here was a civilization that stretched over 1 million square kilometers, a network of cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa that were marvels of urban planning centuries before Rome was founded. Their streets were laid out in perfect grids, their homes equipped with advanced drainage and bathing systems that would not be rivaled for millennia. They were a people of immense order and sophistication, a true peer to Egypt and Mesopotamia, and yet they are utterly silent to us. We have found over 4,000 inscribed objects, seals covered with elegant, symbolic script, but we cannot read a single word. It is a library where every book is locked and the key has been lost to time. This is not merely a linguistic puzzle, it is a historical void. Without a Rosetta Stone to crack this code, we cannot know their names, their laws, their prayers, or their kings. We see the skeleton of their society, its robust and efficient infrastructure, but we have no access to its soul. The mystery deepens with their end. Around 1900 years before the Common Era, this vast, orderly civilization began to collapse. The great cities were gradually abandoned and the culture faded away. The cause is still debated, whether it was climate change, the shifting course of rivers, or something else entirely. But the result is clear: a curtain fell, and the script, once used by thousands, fell into complete obscurity. This combination of sophistication and silence is deeply suggestive. Could the Indus Valley script be the language of a precursor culture, a shadow civilization whose roots were already ancient when these cities reached their peak? The script shows no clear derivation from any known writing system. It appears as a unique and fully formed creation. Its indecipherable nature might be hiding the influence of an even older cultural layer, a substrate of knowledge and symbolism that was adopted and formalized by the city builders. Perhaps the people of Mohenjo-Daro were not the inventors of this system, but its inheritors, using a script and a body of knowledge passed down from a forgotten past. When we look at their meticulous city planning and their standardized weights and measures, we see a system that seems almost pre-planned, as if it were implemented according to a master blueprint developed elsewhere. The inability to read their words means we are missing the chapter that connects them to the wider world. Were they an isolated phenomenon, or were they part of that older network, a node in a chain of knowledge that also influenced the emerging cultures along the Tigris, Euphrates, and Nile? Their unspoken story might be the very thread that ties the great river cultures together, a thread we cannot yet follow because the language it is written in remains a beautiful, frustrating secret. Among the dusty clay tablets of ancient Sumer, we find a document that defies simple explanation: the Sumerian king list. It presents itself as a straightforward historical record, a chronological account of the kings who ruled the land and the cities they governed. Yet its opening lines plunge us into a realm of the fantastic, where the first monarchs held sway for periods that stretch into the absurd, tens of thousands of years each. Ululim, the first king, is said to have ruled for 28,800 years. His successor, Alaljar, reigned for 36,000 years. These are not human lifespans, they are geological epochs measured in generations. Then, the narrative reaches a pivotal point, the Great Flood. After the waters recede, a profound shift occurs. The reigns of the kings grow progressively shorter, dwindling from centuries down to decades, finally settling into the plausible, historically verifiable time frames we recognize. Mainstream scholarship has a ready answer for this. It is mythology. The incredibly long reigns are seen as a literary device, a way for later scribes to grant their rulers an aura of divine antiquity, connecting them to a primordial age of gods and heroes. But what if we are not reading mythology at all, but a corrupted history? From the perspective of shadow civilizations, these impossibly long reigns begin to make a different kind of sense. Imagine a cataclysm so vast it shatters a civilization and scatters its people. The survivors, struggling to rebuild, possess only fragments of memory about the world that was lost. Their oral histories speak of great cities and powerful rulers, but the context is gone. When writing is finally reinvented centuries later, how would a scribe make sense of these ancient, grand stories? A king who ruled for 1,000 years might not be a single immortal man. He could be a placeholder, a symbolic name given to an entire dynasty that governed for 1,000 years. His city might not be a single metropolis, but the name for an entire culture that dominated the region for millennia. The Sumerian king list, in this light, transforms from a fanciful tale into a potential palimpsest. It is a document where the history of a new civilization, Sumer, has been written directly over the blurred and half-remembered history of a much older one. The pre-flood kings with their fantastical reigns could be the ghostly imprint of that precursor society, their long rule a distorted memory of its immense antiquity and stability. The Great Flood acts as the clear dividing line, the event that wiped the slate clean. The progressively shorter reigns after the deluge would then chart the difficult rebirth of humanity, from the scattered, long-lived lineages of the survivors down to the mortal kings of a new age. This is not a dismissal of the list, but a reinterpretation of its deepest code. It suggests that the Sumerians themselves were aware that their own story was not the first chapter. They knew they were living in the aftermath, and they preserved the only history they could, a strange and beautiful fusion of their own reality with the towering, half-forgotten legend of the world before the waters came. The similarities are simply too stark to be coincidence. A king is not just a ruler, he is a god in human form, his power a reflection of the sun or the stars, a concept found along the Nile, the Tigris-Euphrates, and the Yellow River. The universe begins not with a big bang, but with a cosmic egg, a symbol of potential that cracks open to create the world, a story told in lands separated by vast deserts and impassable mountains. And then there are the pyramids, the iconic stepped structures of Mesopotamia's ziggurats, the true pyramids of Egypt, and the stunningly similar temple pyramids of the Maya all echo the same architectural impulse, a man-made mountain reaching for the heavens. These are not vague resemblances, they are specific, complex ideas that appear in cultures that, according to our standard maps, should have had no contact with one another. How can we explain this? The most radical yet elegantly simple answer is that they all learned from the same teacher. This is the theory of a common cultural source, a single primordial civilization, an civilization that cast its shadow across the entire globe. Imagine a culture so advanced and so widespread that its influence became the bedrock for all the societies that followed its collapse. This would not have been a land-bound empire, but a maritime power, its ships navigating coastlines and crossing oceans, establishing outposts and sharing its core package of knowledge, a package that included astronomy, monumental architecture, and the very concept of divine kingship. This is hyperdiffusionism, the idea that a single source seeded the world. It is a controversial theory, often dismissed for stripping individual cultures of their unique genius. But the patterns in the myths and monuments whisper that it cannot be entirely wrong. The great river cultures, then, were not independent cradles of civilization. They were separate nurseries, each tending a unique sapling, but all of those saplings had grown from the very same ancient and now vanished rootstock. The question is no longer if they were connected, but who was the gardener. These strange artifacts are the orphans of history, objects that simply do not fit the timeline we have been taught. Consider a simple clay jar unearthed near Baghdad and dated to the Parthian period, over 2,000 years ago. Inside this unassuming vessel was a copper cylinder and an iron rod, sealed with an asphalt stopper. If filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar or wine, this assembly becomes a functioning electrochemical cell, capable of producing a small but measurable electric current. We call it the Baghdad battery. Mainstream explanations suggest it might have been used for electroplating, to deposit a thin layer of gold or silver onto other objects. Yet our history books insist that electricity was not harnessed until thousands of years later. How do we explain a technology that appears, is used, and then vanishes completely from the record for centuries? It is a whisper of a different path, a spark of knowledge that was lit and then extinguished. Then there is the Antikythera Mechanism, a corroded lump of bronze gears recovered from an ancient Greek shipwreck. When painstakingly analyzed, it revealed itself to be an intricate, hand-cranked analog computer of staggering complexity. Its dials and gears could predict the motions of the sun and moon, track eclipses, and even calculate the timing of the Olympic Games. This was not a simple calendar. It was a miniature model of the cosmos, a level of mechanical engineering that would not be rivaled until the great clockwork devices of 14th century Europe. How could such a sophisticated device exist in the 1st century before the Common Era, with no clear predecessors and no obvious successors in the archaeological record? It feels like a relic from another timeline, a single, surviving piece of a much larger technological tradition that was otherwise lost. Even more enigmatic are the vitrified hill forts of Scotland. At sites like Tap O' North, the stone ramparts have been subjected to such intense, sustained heat that the very rock has melted and fused into a glassy substance. This is not the result of a simple fire. To vitrify stone requires temperatures approaching 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, a heat far beyond what a typical wooden siege fire could produce. Theories about how this was achieved range from the deliberate use of specific fuels and bellows to more speculative ideas about lost pyrotechnic techniques. The result stands as a stark, molten question mark against the sky. Each of these objects, the battery, the computer, the melted stone, is typically dismissed as an anomaly, a curious one-off with a mundane explanation we have yet to find. But when we view them together, a pattern emerges. They are not random flukes. They are scattered fragments of a lost whole, like pages torn from the same advanced textbook and found in different, unrelated libraries. This is the technological legacy of the shadow civilizations. It suggests that advanced knowledge in fields like chemistry, mechanics, and material science did not follow a neat, linear progression. Instead, it flickered in and out of existence. A culture would possess a profound understanding of a specific technology, only to have that knowledge wiped out by catastrophe, war, or the simple passage of time. The survivors, the cultures that rose in the aftermath like the great river civilizations, would then occasionally stumble upon these fragments. They might use the battery without fully grasping the principles of electromagnetism, or incorporate sophisticated astronomy into their myths without understanding the complex math that originally charted the stars. The technology was not invented by them but inherited, a broken heirloom whose original purpose was slowly forgotten. This pattern of appearance, disappearance, and partial rediscovery is the ghost in the machine of history, the tangible evidence that our past is built upon the ruins of a world that knew more than we remember. A profound truth echoes through the halls of history, that knowledge is the most fragile of all human creations. In ages before the printed word, before digital storage, the entire legacy of a culture could vanish in a single generation if its living bearers fell silent. This vulnerability forged a powerful solution: the creation of human libraries. Across the ancient world, specialized groups emerged as the designated guardians of memory. In Egypt, the mystery schools operated behind temple walls, their initiates undergoing years of rigorous training not just in ritual, but in astronomy, geometry, and medicine. In the misty forests of Celtic Europe, the Druids served as judges, historians, and philosophers, committing their entire body of knowledge to memory, deeming writing too profane for such sacred truths. In countless indigenous cultures, shamanic lineages passed down intricate understandings of herbal medicine, celestial cycles, and creation stories through song, dance, and direct apprenticeship. These were not casual storytellers, they were rigorously trained custodians of a vast and complex inheritance. What is most striking is the consistent story these diverse groups told about the source of their wisdom. They did not typically claim to have invented it themselves. Instead, they spoke of being links in a very long chain, guardians of teachings handed down from a lost age. The Egyptian priests spoke of Zep-Tepi, the first time, an era of gods who established the cosmic order. The Druids were said to preserve the knowledge of the Tuatha De Danann, a god-like people who arrived in Ireland long before the Celts. Shamanic traditions worldwide recount a time when ancestors learned directly from the spirits or from a race of giants. The Great Flood is a recurring marker, a chronological anchor point separating that golden age of original knowledge from the current diminished world. This was not a boast but a statement of responsibility, a declaration that they were preserving something far older and more precious than themselves. This is where the concept of secret societies transforms from a topic of conspiracy to one of profound historical importance. Their rituals and symbols were not arbitrary. They were a sophisticated mnemonic technology, a way to encode complex information into stories, gestures, and images that could be reliably transmitted across centuries. A single symbol, like the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail, could encapsulate an entire understanding of cosmic cycles, the eternal return, and the unity of all things. An initiation ritual might physically reenact the procession of the equinoxes, guiding the initiate through a symbolic death and rebirth that mirrored the soul's journey through the stars. The knowledge was hidden not necessarily to keep it secret from the common person, but to keep it safe, to protect its integrity from the erosion of time, the chaos of invasion, and the slow decay of collective memory. The original scientific context of this knowledge, the precise mathematical formulas or the specific engineering principles of the shadow civilizations, may have faded. But its spiritual and symbolic essence, its core understanding of a living, intelligent cosmos, was preserved intact. The sheer persistence of these traditions, maintained at great personal cost across countless generations, is perhaps the most compelling argument for their authenticity. Why would an entire class of people dedicate their lives to memorizing and protecting a lie? The more logical conclusion is that they were preserving a coherent system of understanding the world that they genuinely believed was of immense value, a system they claimed originated in a time and place now lost to conventional history. They were the keepers of the flame, ensuring that even if the great libraries of a precursor world were drowned or turned to dust, the light of their wisdom would not be entirely extinguished. Their whispered teachings are the final, living echo of the shadow civilizations, a direct thread connecting our world to the world before the Cataclysm. The ground beneath our feet holds a record far older than any written history. Today, advanced technology is giving us the tools to read that record, revealing a planet scarred by ancient upheavals that could have erased entire chapters of the human story. Satellite imagery now peers through dense jungle canopies, exposing the ghostly outlines of vast, forgotten cities. In the deserts, ground-penetrating radar uncovers networks of walls and roads buried for millennia under the shifting sands. But the most profound discoveries are happening beneath the waves. Using sonar and a technology called LiDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging, researchers are mapping the continental shelves, the vast plains of land that were above water during the last ice age. These sunken landscapes were not barren. They were the fertile coastal plains and river deltas where early humanity would have naturally settled. The data is revealing what look like geometric patterns, the potential foundations of settlements now submerged under hundreds of feet of water. A prime example is the Yonaguni Monument off the coast of Japan. This is a massive, terraced structure with sharp, 90-degree angles, flat platforms, and what appear to be staircases ascending its side. While some geologists argue it could be a natural sandstone formation, the sheer regularity and symmetry of the features are deeply compelling. It stands as a silent, underwater sentinel, challenging us to decide if we are looking at an incredible quirk of nature or the ruins of a lost world. Beyond structures, the very climate is speaking to us. Scientists drill deep into ice sheets and lake beds, extracting long cores of ice and sediment. These cores are like tree rings for the planet, preserving a year-by-year diary of Earth's ancient atmosphere. They reveal periods of shocking, abrupt climate change. We can see evidence of dramatic cooling events, prolonged droughts, and sudden warming spikes that would have melted ice sheets at a catastrophic pace. This data is no longer just background for environmental science. It is becoming a primary witness in a historical investigation. It provides the timeline for potential catastrophe, pinpointing the exact eras when a stable climate suddenly shattered. This allows us to ask a targeted question: what human societies were thriving on those now submerged continental shelves just before the sea levels rose? The geological and climatic data is building a compelling case, not for a single lost city like Atlantis, but for a lost world, a global network of coastal cultures that flourished when the oceans were lower. Their homelands are now at the bottom of the sea, and their story is written in the layers of ice and the strange shapes on the ocean floor, waiting for us to finally piece it together. This resistance to rewriting our past is not just about stubbornness. It is a fundamental feature of how we process knowledge. The established timeline of human history, a clean and linear path from primitive hunter-gatherers to sophisticated city builders, is more than a theory. It is a foundational story. It is the narrative upon which countless academic careers have been built, the framework for museum dioramas, and the structure of our history textbooks. Evidence that shatters this framework, like the impossible old age of Göbekli Tepe, does not simply add a new piece to the puzzle. It suggests we have been trying to solve the wrong puzzle all along. Accepting such a discovery forces a painful and expensive re-evaluation of everything we thought we knew. It would mean rewriting curricula, redesigning exhibits, and, most challenging of all, admitting that a core pillar of our understanding was incomplete. Alongside this institutional inertia is a very legitimate fear. The field of archaeology has been plagued by sensationalist claims and pseudo-historical fantasies that distort evidence to fit preconceived narratives. This has created a culture where any challenge to the mainstream model is often met with immediate suspicion, tarred with the same brush as the most outlandish conspiracy theories. The desire to protect the integrity of the discipline is noble, but it can create a blind spot. When the instinct to debunk becomes too strong, it can sometimes lead to dismissing genuine anomalies too quickly, explaining away the inexplicable rather than grappling with its uncomfortable implications. The history of science, however, is a long chronicle of radical ideas that were initially ridiculed. The theory of plate tectonics was once considered laughable. The idea that bacteria cause disease was met with scorn, and the concept of a universe beyond our own galaxy was dismissed as fantasy. In every case, a paradigm had to fracture before a new, more accurate understanding could emerge. Embracing the possibility of shadow civilizations requires this same intellectual courage. It is not about blindly accepting every wild claim, but about having the humility to admit that our current story might be wrong. It is a call to follow the evidence, no matter how unsettling the path may become, and to ask the most difficult question of all: what if we are not the first to build a world, but merely the latest to forget the ones that came before? The Minoan civilization presents a powerful and tangible glimpse into how a vibrant society can be shattered. On the island of Crete, for nearly 2,000 years, they built magnificent multi-story palaces like Knossos, complete with running water, intricate drainage systems, and storerooms overflowing with goods from across the Mediterranean. Their art bursts with life, depicting athletic youths leaping over bulls and elegant women in elaborate dresses, a world seemingly free of the fortifications and warrior kings that dominated the mainland. They were a thalassocracy, a sea empire, their ships connecting the ancient world, and they wrote, but not in a language we can understand. Their script, called Linear A, remains one of archaeology's most stubborn locks, sealing away their own words, their history, and their thoughts. They were a fully realized, brilliant culture, yet their origins are strangely murky, seeming to emerge on Crete with a remarkable level of sophistication. This combination of brilliance and obscured beginnings makes them a perfect candidate for a bridge civilization. They are not a complete shadow. We have their palaces and their art, but the source of their unique cultural spark and the meaning of their own writing are veiled from us. Then, around the middle of the second millennium before the Common Era, their world ended. The volcano on the island of Thera, modern Santorini, erupted in one of the most violent geological events in human history. The explosion was cataclysmic, dwarfing even the famous eruption of Krakatoa. It generated colossal tsunamis that would have slammed into the northern coast of Crete, wiping out its vital ports and fleet. A thick layer of volcanic ash smothered farmlands, leading to famine, and the ensuing climate disruption from the aerosols in the atmosphere would have caused years of cold and failed harvests across the region. The Minoan civilization, for all its grace and power, did not immediately vanish, but it was mortally wounded. Its influence waned, its palaces were damaged and never fully recovered their former glory, and within centuries they were overrun by the more militaristic Mycenaeans from the Greek mainland. The Minoan story is a historical echo of the greater cataclysms that may have erased earlier shadow civilizations. Here, we are not dealing with theoretical meltwater pulses or speculative impacts. We have a verifiable geological culprit. Thera provides a documented scientific mechanism for how a single, terrible day can end a golden age. The Minoans stand as a later, clearer example of the fragile relationship between human achievement and planetary forces. They show us that the pattern of rise, catastrophic disruption, and legacy absorbed by successor cultures is not just a theory for prehistory, but a demonstrable fact of the ancient world. Their undeciphered script is a haunting reminder that even a culture we can touch and walk through can keep its deepest secrets. Our own bodies carry a genetic memory of ancient journeys, a map written in our DNA that traces the paths our ancestors walked tens of thousands of years ago. Through the study of mitochondrial DNA passed from mother to child and Y chromosomes passed from father to son, scientists have charted the great human migrations out of Africa and across the continents. This incredible map of human movement reveals a story of exploration and settlement. But what if it also holds clues to a much more recent and dramatic event, the collapse of a world? The timelines of these genetic journeys are long, but what if we are misreading the data? The sudden, widespread dispersal of a particular genetic marker could indicate more than just gradual exploration. It could signal a flight, a desperate exodus of people from a collapsing homeland. This idea finds a powerful echo in the spread of languages. Languages are not just tools for communication, they are living fossils preserving the history of their speakers. The breathtaking distribution of the Austronesian language family is a perfect example. This single language family stretches from Madagascar off the coast of Africa all the way to remote Easter Island in the Pacific, a domain covering more than half the planet's longitude. Such an immense reach was not achieved by accident. It speaks of a purposeful, seafaring culture of astonishing skill and ambition, a people who mastered the ocean currents and navigated by the stars for generations. Were these incredible voyagers simply intrepid explorers, or were they the descendants of a shadow civilization, a coastal society forced from their submerged homelands by rising seas? Their epic migrations could be the story of survivors, carrying not just their belongings in their boats, but the precious knowledge of agriculture, astronomy, and social structure, planting the seeds of new cultures on every island they found. The key to unlocking this deeper history lies in a grand synthesis. By overlaying the hard evidence of genetics with the cultural roadmap of linguistics and the physical proof of archaeology, we can begin to see a faint, shimmering outline emerge. We are no longer just tracing the movement of people, we are tracing the movement of ideas. The appearance of pyramid-like structures in Mesopotamia, Egypt, and Mesoamerica might not be a coincidence of parallel development, but a shared architectural idea carried along these ancient migration routes. The same complex understanding of celestial cycles found in disparate cultures could be a fragment of a unified knowledge system, dispersed like pieces of a broken mirror across the globe. This layered evidence points toward a single, staggering possibility: that the great human migrations were not just a story of populating an empty world, but of repopulating a shattered one. The genetic and linguistic trails we see today might be the ghostly imprint of a global network, the final diaspora of a people who once walked the coastal plains now lying silent beneath the waves. The alchemist's laboratory was more than a place of primitive chemistry, it was a temple of forgotten physics. While history often reduces their quest to a foolish desire for gold, their true goal was far more profound: the mastery of nature itself. They sought the philosopher's stone not merely to create wealth, but to unlock the fundamental principles governing the transformation of matter. This grand ambition was always framed as a recovery, not an invention. Alchemists across Europe, the Middle East, and China consistently claimed their art was a legacy, a sacred science handed down from a time before memory. They looked to mythical founders like Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great sage of Egypt, or the divine farmer Emperor Shennong in China, figures who were consistently portrayed not as originators, but as conduits for a wisdom that predated them. These were the supposed survivors of a fallen age, the guardians who preserved a sliver of a greater understanding. When an alchemist spoke of turning lead into gold, they were not just talking about metals. They were attempting to reverse a cosmic process of decay, to restore matter to a perceived primordial state of perfection, a state they believed was understood and routinely manipulated by their legendary predecessors. The bizarre and intricate symbols of alchemy, from the Ouroboros to the intricate dances of the king and queen, were not arbitrary. They formed a coded language, a desperate attempt to preserve complex operations whose original scientific context had been lost. The alchemical process of solve et coagula, to dissolve and coagulate, mirrors the precise steps of modern material science, where substances are broken down to their essential components and then recombined into new forms with desired properties. The quest for a universal solvent that could dissolve all matter sounds like a search for the fundamental force that binds atoms together. Could it be that these were not mystical fantasies, but the garbled, symbolic echoes of a sophisticated technology? A technology that understood the nature of subatomic particles and energy states, a knowledge that was shattered and dispersed by a global cataclysm. The alchemists, then, were the archaeologists of a lost scientific paradigm. They were sifting through the fragments of a broken mirror, trying to piece together a reflection of a world that had mastered the very fabric of reality, a mastery we are only just beginning to reclaim through the strange and counterintuitive world of quantum physics. The search for these lost worlds is no longer confined to dusty libraries or speculative fiction. It is happening right now, driven by new technologies and a growing number of researchers willing to challenge the old guard. In the highlands of Indonesia, the site of Gunung Padang is at the center of a fierce debate. What appears to be a hill is, according to geological surveys and core samples, a massive, layered pyramid. The deepest layers of this structure have been dated to an astonishing age, potentially over 20,000 years old. If these findings are confirmed, it would mean a sophisticated society was erecting monumental architecture at a time when our history books insist humanity was barely emerging from the last ice age as simple hunter-gatherers. This is not a lone anomaly. Beneath the clear waters of the Bahamas, the Bimini Road presents a straight line of massive, rectangular stone blocks that look unnervingly like a submerged causeway or a ruined harbor wall. In the cold, dark depths of the Baltic Sea, sonar has revealed a strange, circular object with what seem to be architectural features, a discovery so puzzling it has inspired countless theories and expeditions. These sites are the new frontier, the physical places where the theory of shadow civilizations is being tested with radar, carbon dating, and underwater robots. This movement has found a powerful voice in figures like Graham Hancock, who has tirelessly argued that a lost, advanced civilization was wiped out in the Great Cataclysm. His work, and that of others, has galvanized a global community, funding independent research and demanding that mainstream institutions take a second look at the evidence they have long dismissed. The pushback is intense, with many established archaeologists labeling this work as pseudoscience. Yet, the questions it raises are becoming impossible to ignore. How do we explain the impossible dates? What do we make of the global patterns? Each anomalous discovery, whether it ultimately proves to be natural or man-made, forces a crucial conversation. They are not just rocks, they are testable hypotheses. Every core sample drilled, every sonar map completed, is another piece of data in a grand, global investigation. We are no longer just relying on myths, we are gathering physical proof, and with each new finding, the timeline of human history feels less like a settled fact and more like a mystery that is just beginning to unravel. Such a discovery would fundamentally rewrite the story of us. Proving the existence of a global precursor civilization would not merely add a chapter to our history books, it would shatter the very narrative of linear human progress. We would have to confront the staggering possibility that our own technological age is not a unique pinnacle, but one of many cycles of rise and fall on this planet. The arrogance of our modern era would be replaced by a profound humility, the understanding that others long before us may have reached similar heights or perhaps even surpassed them, only to see it all crumble into dust and silence. This knowledge would transform our past from a series of isolated beginnings into a continuous, perhaps even repeating, drama of ambition and consequence. Beyond this philosophical shock, there lies a tantalizing practical hope. What if these shadow cultures left behind more than just enigmatic ruins? Their monuments, aligned with such precision to the stars, and their myths, filled with complex cosmological understanding, might be more than just artifacts. They could be a coded library, a legacy of knowledge waiting to be deciphered. Imagine unlocking an ancient, sustainable model of energy drawn from the Earth itself, a principle understood by those who built with such impossible stone. Or perhaps their social structures, hinted at in the meticulous city planning of the Indus Valley, or the apparent lack of fortifications in Minoan Crete, could offer blueprints for harmonious human organization that we have struggled to achieve. The solutions to some of our most pressing modern problems, from energy scarcity to social strife, might not lie in an uncertain future, but in a forgotten past we are only now learning to read. Yet this legacy would also carry a grave and urgent warning. The very fact that this civilization is gone, that its cities lie beneath the waves and its name is lost to time, is the most important lesson it could teach us. Their end, likely triggered by climatic cataclysm, might not have been a simple accident of nature. Could their advancement have come at a cost, a reckless exploitation of their environment that made them vulnerable to the shifting climate? Or did internal conflict, perhaps a war fought with technologies we can scarcely imagine, fracture their global network just when unity was most needed? Their story would become the ultimate cautionary tale, a direct message from the past showing us that no amount of sophistication can inoculate a society against its own hubris or short-sightedness. This revelation would place upon our shoulders an immense ethical weight. How would we handle such transformative knowledge? The foundations of many modern religions and worldviews are built upon a specific understanding of human origins and destiny. Introducing a sophisticated, ancient humanity into that equation could create deep social and spiritual upheaval. The responsibility would be to integrate this truth with care, to allow it to enrich our global culture without tearing it apart. We would have to learn from their mistakes without repeating them, and to use their wisdom without awakening the same forces that may have led to their downfall. The past would cease to be a distant, silent land. It would become a mirror reflecting back at us both our greatest potential and our most profound vulnerabilities, forcing us to ask not just who we are, but who we dare to become. We are left not with a single mystery, but with a vast and interconnected puzzle, the pieces of which are scattered across geology, mythology, and genetics. When you bring all these fragments together, the old story of human history no longer fits. The evidence compels a new model, one that replaces the straight, ascending line of progress with something far more dramatic, a cycle of rise and fall, of catastrophe and rebirth. This is a punctuated equilibrium, where long periods of stability are shattered by global events that reset the entire board. In this view, the great river cultures we have long celebrated as the dawn of civilization were not the dawn at all. They were the brilliant, determined sunrise after a long and forgotten night. They represent a second wave of complex society, a powerful restart. These cultures, from the Nile to the Indus, were built not on virgin soil, but upon the cultural and technological rubble of a much older world. They were the inheritors, the survivors who gathered the scattered seeds of a global first-wave civilization, a civilization that flourished on the now drowned coastal plains and was largely obliterated by the climatic chaos at the end of the last ice age. This new model does not diminish the pyramids of Egypt or the ziggurats of Mesopotamia. On the contrary, it makes their achievements even more profound. We are not looking at the work of primitive pioneers, but at the legacy of resilient refugees who, against all odds, managed to rebuild a world from the ashes of a forgotten one. It fills the shadowy pre-dawn of history with substance and meaning, transforming empty time into an age of lost grandeur, a memory that shaped everything that followed. Our journey through the shadowed halls of forgotten time reveals a human past far richer and more mysterious than any single story could contain. From the rain-scarred Sphinx to the star-aligned pyramids, from the sunken stones of Dwarka to the silent script of the Indus, a consistent pattern emerges from the depth. This is not an attempt to swap one rigid dogma for another, but an invitation to embrace a more open and inquisitive spirit. The evidence compels us to see our history not as a straight, ascending line, but as a story of resilience and rediscovery, a cycle of brilliant light and long, deep shadows. As we now face our own potential ecological and technological turning points, understanding these ancient rhythms becomes vitally urgent. The shadows of the past are not empty voids. They are filled with profound lessons about the fragility of civilization, the enduring power of human ingenuity, and the sobering reality that no society, no matter how advanced, is immune to the forces of nature or the consequences of its own actions. This is a conversation that belongs to all of us. I would love to hear which of these ancient mysteries speaks most deeply to you, so please share your thoughts and continue the exploration in the comments below.